Yo, what's good guys? Welcome back to another Shamshir Sound video. Today is going to be about making your mix louder. And I want to talk about some basics because it's actually much simpler than we think. Right here, I have the project open for the track with Kid Illy called Un Forastero. Un Forastero! This track is engineered to be loud from the get-go. So what do I mean by that? I mean that if I turn off the master chain, you're not going to hear much of a difference. It's pretty similar. Really, the master chain is just slamming it to 0 dB. And I'll explain what I'm doing with this master chain. So this is pretty much like my loud master chain. I realized after a couple of songs, I'm like there was a track I released that was just so heavily processed on the master that it really... Laid Back Luke talks about this, like too much processing can almost pull the soul away from the song. It almost like it suffocates it and chokes it. And so you want to be careful. It's always situational. Like, I'm sure if this track had a lot more headroom, I could put a lot more effects. You know, it depends on what my end goal is. But here I'm going to show you what are the effects chains as it was rendered, as it was uploaded to SoundCloud, as it was sent. So the final version of this track is running 1.3 dB gain with T-Rax Clipper all the way to the right, slamming that at 0 dB. Next, we have this SSL EQ that's not doing anything. The high pass filter is off and the EQ is off. So this is off, this is off. The only thing I have on is the analog button. So what that's doing is that it's just adding a little bit of analog characteristic. It's adding a little bit of a bottom noise floor. Very basically inaudible, like super low level psychoacoustics, but it kind of gives this like analog kind of character. Really has to be heard personally for you to hear it. And the last thing is the sausage, one of my favorite plugins. 0% color, 0% fatness, and 0 dB gain. And with this, you'd be wondering, well, Ali, why are you putting sausage on the master? I'm actually putting sausage more and more on my master, and it's actually on my master on the new track I'm working on. The new track I'm working on has classic clipper and has sausage fattener. And the reason for this is that if you have a good sounding mix, sausage fattener, like 9 out of 10 times, is going to make your mix sound better. It can fix a lot of issues with presence. It can fix a lot of issues with kind of like flatlining, like any issues in terms of like just kind of fixing an individual track. And that sounds so broad, like it sounds like I'm just murdering it. But when you have sausage fattener used moderately and used conservatively, it will usually pack a little bit more punch, and it'll usually give your if it's on an instance track, of course, you can go crazy with the fatness and the color and the gain. But on the master, I recommend 0%, 0%. 0 dB, maybe play around with the gain knob, but this is just giving it a little bit more punch and almost making this mix sound a little bit more cleaner, giving it a little bit more presence, fixing that presence. It caps it at -0.1. So keep that in mind. Sausage fattener mix will be at -0.1, which is nice. You know, you could do 0 dB, or you could do at -0.1. Now, let's look at the levels of this mix before and after the effects chain, just so I can better demonstrate to you guys like what's going on with these plugins. So if we go to the drop, so we're just about at the drop here. So now the drop just kicked in. So at the drop, we can see sausage fattener is working. It's at -0.1, -5.5 RMS. So that's pretty much the peak of the RMS is -5.5. I really wanted to go for like a bass jackers vibe. I wanted to go for an F Tampa vibe with this song. And that's why I was sculpting a lot of space for the kick. So when you're making your song and you want it to be loud, it needs to be engineered. And I'm going back to that point. It needs to be engineered to be loud from the get-go. Before we listen, let's just see what Span does with no effects, no clipper, no sausage fattener, okay, nothing. And let's just listen to the drop again. So you can see the drop. Now it's clipping, it's going crazy, but it's still like -5 RMS. Even if we put on just let's just put on like just something that slams it at 0 dB. So let's put on like Oxford Inflator. Okay. And still, this is going to be at -5 RMS. So it's already made to be loud. All that my plugins here are doing are just like leveling it, but very subtle. To the point where the master effects is almost giving like, it's not too different. And so that's, I think, is a big factor, is that a lot of times we are making a song and like, we make it and we're like, well, why can't I make it sound big? Are there master plugins that will make my song sound huge and make the kick just punch through like how, you know, Mr. Black did and how Ollie James did and how he did and how this guy did, or how Tiesto has his track, you know, or John Christian. But let's have a listen to the track with the master effects on. Okay, we won't even look at span. So let's listen to this part right here. Okay, now let's put on Oxford Inflator. I'm just going to do that for the sake of not clipping into the OBS recording. And let's just listen to this version, which is like literally nothing, just Oxford Inflator. Just like a transparent limiter. So it's still going to be loud. One thing about Sausage is it does change the way the bass sounds. Pay close attention to that. Sausage Fattener does change the way the bass sounds, and on your projects you might be thinking like, oh, well, it was boomy, now it's not boomy anymore. Sausage Fattener tends to do that. It'll fix the presence and remove the boominess. Sometimes there's too much boominess, especially for us headphone users. We might not be able to gauge when we have too much boom or too much low end in the wrong regions. But the whole point of this was just to show you guys that with an unmastered mix, it's sounding very similar to the mastered mix. And if we take a look at elements like the kick, so this is going to be really key. So one thing is that my kick is like the king, right? The kick is the king in this track. It's at 0 dB, and I'm making sure that no one comes in direct competition with the kick. If they do, it's a close, but they don't overrule it. Laid Back Luke talks about that a lot, is that you have to make a sacrifice. If the kick is going to be the main factor, you want to build like a mountain. You want to make sure that like your fat ass lead is not at 0 dB, because then it's like conflicting with the kick. It's almost taking away energy from the kick, if that makes sense. So let's look at the lead chain. This is the lead chain, and so that this is where these components go. So this one, it has Sausage Fattener on there, so it's only going to hit -0.1. It's barely there, but I didn't want it at 0 dB. Similarly, this is on the same topic of loudness. If we look at span and we play my build-up, even the intro, pay a lot of attention to this, because all these tips are going to help you guys make a louder and a more impactful mix, because I wanted to go like bass jacker style. So I was using methodology that they were using too. If you guys watched that snare riser video, that was like taken from bass jackers, that idea. So let's listen to this. We're not listening right now, we're just looking at the span levels. And the span levels are like -8.6, -9. It would ruin the song if the intro was louder than the drop, because then the listener is used to like -5 RMS at the intro, and then they get a lower RMS at the drop. This is during the build-up stage. So we're hitting like -12, -13. And now we know we're at the drop, -5.5. So really, the kick is the driving factor of this song. And don't be ashamed of like running into your master hot. Don't get me wrong. Like this, right? If somebody came in and was like, "Oh, Ali, what are you doing? The mix is too hot. It's hitting +2 dB. It's no, do not worry about that. This is 32-bit floating point data. There's so much headroom. To the point where Respawn, an artist on Spinnin' Records and Revealed, he even said like you could even take a mix that's hot and just make a new project, and because it's 32-bit, you could just turn down the volume if you wanted to do the academic approach of like, oh, going into your plugin at -4 dB peak or -6 dB peak. There's no rules. The big guys in the industry, they don't abide by these rules. They just go by what they're trying to achieve, and you need to just trust yourself and own up to it. So that's really what I wanted to hit hard with this, is that this song was engineered to be loud from the beginning. Secondly, I used a minimalistic mastering chain with just a sausage fattener and the clipper, and really this EQ, you could even skip this. It's not really necessary at all. It's not really changing anything. It's just giving a little bit of like analog grit, a little bit of analog white noise grit, but at such a low level. I'm talking like -100 dB, -90 dB. And the last thing I want to take a look at, which is part of the third, is just be cognitive of the levels. You don't want the intro to be louder than your drop. You don't want the build up to be louder than the drop. But there's a sweet spot where if the build up is too quiet, so you have to find that sweet spot. It's again just trusting yourself, engaging your sounds to see, because it's all about transitions. Those are the most hard thing to do. So let's go to the break. So this is the break. This is where the 808s hit. And we can see, though the 808s are big, let's have a listen. So even though it's big, I made sure that the 808 and that break as a whole is not robbing the energy from the drop. It's only hitting like -6.5 RMS, which is still giving more RMS to the drop. And also, if we look at the 808, I think I didn't let it go to 0 dB. Maybe I'm wrong. Aha. So the 808, you can see this is like the last plugin on the 808, and this was giving it a lot of extra body, but I set the final limit to -0.81. And this way, it's not in direct competition with the kick. Because if I did 0, let's go ahead and do that. If I do 0, let's see what happens with span. Ooh, you see? Oh, now, ooh, -5.9, right? Could probably do it, but like I said, it's all about layers and sculpting. It's all about sculpting space. And one wrong move, if I had that at -5.9 and I threw in a vocal and like a little bit more percussive elements and effects, all of a sudden it could make the drop actually worse, right? Though it's a lot of art, there's a lot of like methodology and logistics that goes into the creation of EDM. That's why I think I love EDM, is that there's a lot of methodology and technical aspects. It's almost like you're building. And so these are just some tips that can help you guys make a louder mix and achieve what it is you want to do. Now, of course, the kick, you can check out that video I made about stacking the 2 kicks, how to combine 2 kicks. And I also made a video about the riser snare that I used during the build-up and how I low-passed it to create more of a more audibly pleasing build-up. But I hope you guys can incorporate these tips into your productions. Let me know if you guys want to see more mastering. It seems like more of you guys are asking for sound design. So I'm going to be looking to make more sound design videos with synths that I actually haven't demonstrated with you guys. So like Serum, Silent One, going to be making more of that. And hopefully you guys can incorporate this. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to give a like. And I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, keep making some bangers and feel free to throw me any messages and suggestions. Take care. Have a great day.